Trying to make more sense of your family business? Let's talk about it.
Welcome to another video in the series Making Sense of Family Business. I'm John Camfield, the Family Business Solutionist, broadcasting from Melbourne in Australia. Today I'm talking about family succession and intergenerational tension. This is specifically talking about succession in the family rather than succession in the family business, although we're talking about business families, so there is a relationship there. These videos and podcasts are designed to help make more sense of family business. In over 3 decades of working with a great many family businesses, it's become very clear that in most cases, the great difference between family success, peace and prosperity, and disastrous outcomes lies in the families being aware of and dealing with the risks of the inevitable conflicts that will arise in any family with a pulse that also happens to have a business. So this is of interest to you, and let's get into it. The word succession is bandied around a lot in business advisory circles and family business circles. It's something that happens in every generation, unless the family business is going to be sold, in which case we don't really have a succession. Because succession means, it comes from a Latin root, successio, which means a following after. And within a business family, in other words, a family that has a family business somewhere in the mix, that usually means a transfer of business and other assets in the family from one generation to the next. Now, it could be through the family, or it might even be a passing on to employees in the business, but it's within the ecosphere of that particular family group. It's not going outside. So succession is a replacement, effectively, of an incumbent generation of leaders and managers and owners with a next generation in some form or another. Now, given this is going to happen to every business ownership structure when it's privately owned, because it's not an if, it's a when, eventually people get old and they can no longer run their business, it's quite remarkable that survey after survey around the world identifies that less than 1 in 5 family businesses has a proper succession plan, and typically less than 1 in 5 business families have a proper succession plan. And when we talk about a proper succession plan, we're talking about something which has been formally discussed, written up, agreed, and finalised in a way that makes it legally enforceable. What's even more concerning is that only half of those that have proper plans actually have the governance structures and systems in place to carry out the plans. So we're talking about ultimately 1 in 10 business families may have a viable succession plan for the business they may have worked on for generations and the family they obviously care about. That's something that needs to be addressed because, in my experience, almost all of the conflicts I deal with are succession is a catalyst to bring out problems in the family that have often been there for decades. So today's talk is really focusing on how bad dynamics in the family create problems in family succession, with the potential for that to then roll over into business succession. So what are those causes of conflict? Well, the first one that we mention all the time is lack of clarity. There is no plan, or if there is a plan, people don't know what it is, which means they don't know what to expect. They don't know whether they'll get their just desserts. They don't know whether they will be enriched and benefit or not. And people hate not knowing. They might dislike change, but they really hate not knowing things. And when there is the slightest opportunity, suspicion and negativity tends to rush in and fill the vacuum that is left by lack of certainty because there's lack of clarity. Second thing that happens in a family context is generational misalignment. I've talked about this in previous videos, where we've got generations have morals, ethics, cultures which differ because the circumstances in which they've been developed and the experiences that each generation has are very, very different. Consequently, the personal, the moral standards can get completely out of whack with the collective family ethical guidelines, as the ethical framework that the family thinks it works under. And the family may be working under a system of guidelines which is completely outdated as a consequence of technology improvements, lack of respect for elders because they no longer have the answers, they can no longer do things because they're not on top of the technology that is driving a lot of today's world. It's creating bigger problems than have always been there between generations. It's not just old bull, young bull anymore. It's not purely mastery of the tribe and the circumstance. It's much more than that. We also find in succession, we can never forget that there are massive identity issues. I've talked about in previous videos, I've talked about the identity trap, the CEO syndrome, the founder syndrome, things like that, which impact people who have got so much invested in their self-image as the leader of a business that they almost cannot imagine what life will be like if they're no longer in that position. And rather than work it out, a lot of people just hold on tighter and tighter and tighter. And part of the reason they do that is because they're already well beyond the time when they should have gracefully moved sideways to let other people take over. And we can see the impact of poor succession processes, especially in politics around the world, when people haven't moved quickly enough, and then you get bad consequences happening. When it happens in family businesses, it leads to things like Netflix dramas. Too little, too late. Succession should be a process, not an event. It's an old saw. It should happen over years, not because somebody's had a heart attack and there's now no option. It's got to happen. Because at that time, the family is going to be at its most vulnerable. So families need to put in effort, and as I said in the introduction, we find that less than 1 in 10 families is properly prepared. I mean, less than a quarter of lawyers actually have wills, which is bizarre. Less than 1 in 10 families have proper estate plans. And that means that parents are often going to be leaving a terrible mess behind them. And also with parents living much longer, it may mean that their children are really so old by the time they inherit that all the benefits they could have had through their lives have simply passed them by. That creates conflicts in families as well, and it's unfortunate. It could be better handled. I have a version of the 7 Ps, and it goes: proper planning and preparation prevent piss poor performance. That's used in military and government and business speak in many, many places, but it applies very, very specifically into the succession space, because if you don't have proper planning and preparation in the family, and I'll talk about what that means in a moment, then chances are you will get very bad outcomes. Very bad outcomes lead to lots of conflict, or conflict forms part of the bad outcomes, and all the stuff the family has worked to create over the years basically disappears down a drain. All of this can be summarized in a way by saying the family governance is weak. Now, most people don't think of governance in a family environment. Certainly you think of it in a corporate environment, but governance in a family environment? Governance means the system of management by which an operation works. And normally families are considered to be places of high trust, love, unconditional nurture, all of those sorts of things. But here's the rub. If you have a family that also has shared interest in a family business, both the business and the family need to do some additional things in terms of having policies, procedures, guidelines, rules, stated values, etc., things they can refer to make what is often implicit explicit in terms of guidelines and guardrails, so that they don't run foul of the many, many problems that can occur because you're mixing human dynamics, family relationships with commercial activities. So what sort of strategies and solutions can we apply to help make family succession work better, so family business succession can also proceed on a comfortable basis? Well, the first thing that you'll probably have gathered from what I've already said is you want to start early. If the family is constantly talking about expectations for the future, the family life cycle, the inevitability that people will get old, they will either retire or move into different roles, and ultimately they won't be around. If the family gets used to talking about that and it becomes natural, and what could be more natural than life cycles, then the plans will come out of that. The plans can then be discussed on a regular basis. They can be documented on a regular basis. Apart from minimising litigation risk, if you have a good paper trail of all the things that have been discussed and agreed over the years, you've also got more clarity amongst family members, and it becomes much harder for anyone to say, I thought this is what we agreed, or I thought that was what was going to happen, because it's been documented. And everybody knows what the deal is. Everyone knows what to expect. They know how much support they're going to get from the family or not, and then that helps them plan their own lives. So we're looking for transparent conversations in the family about estate plans, family succession plans, business succession plans, and so forth. We need good governance structures and systems. In a family, a business family, that usually means setting up a family council, like a board of directors, if you like, for the family. So it's focused purely on family issues, and these are the representatives of each of the major bloodlines who meet in a relatively formal business-like environment to make decisions that are important about the family and its future, including its wealth, its assets, its business, and so forth. If you have a proper family council, it will also create policies, things like spousal policies. It may say that we've got family wealth, therefore anybody who's joining our family as a spouse or a partner needs to enter into binding financial agreements to make sure the family doesn't end up stuck in bruising litigation because, say, a marriage or a relationship is broken down. You might need shareholder agreements. You might need employment agreements, things of that sort, policies that are created by the family that reflect the relationship, the rules of engagement of the family with the business. You've got to have a structure to be able to do that, and most importantly, to then enforce it once it's done. Remember the early point, 1 in 5 businesses have a proper succession plan, only 1 in 10 have the structures to make it work. Same thing applies to families. Third item would be connectedness. The family, if it's tied together more closely than it normally would be by business interests, needs to put extra effort into its natural connectedness so that people are aware if there are problems brewing, concerns, expectations, aspirations, conflicts, or anything. The family is aware of those things as early as possible, and it can then try to do something about diffusing them before they grow into something that's going to be ugly in the nature of a big conflict. Fourth item would be have a family plan. If you're going to organise succession, don't do it as a separate item. Because if you do, chances are it'll be when you're under a lot of stress, as opposed to it being a natural part of the life cycle. So I would always advise that a succession plan in a family should form part of the family's long-term plan, and family plans that I put together typically between 25 and 100 years. And they invariably encompass the period where the current elders are likely to no longer be with us. And it's really quite interesting to ask them to try and take a perspective of being deceased, practice being dead, assuming they're going to let you in upstairs, looking down, what would you want to see has become of your family as a result of what you've left behind you? All too often, it's an almighty mess. And you see the blood running from people's faces when they see, okay, if I really step back and take a deep breath and think about what I'm doing or not doing, I am not doing the right thing by this family. And what I'm leaving behind is not a great tribute to my legacy either. Whereas if I made the effort and I put stuff in and I sponsored my kids and their families, their spouses, their adult children, all the rest of it, having intelligent conversations, I could be proud of what I've achieved. I could be proud of that next generation. Could be comfortable about sponsoring the succession that I know needs to happen, but I'm afraid to do. One of the things that's often missed is you need to support the humans in this mix. We're talking about times of change, and psychologists tell us most people will prefer to put up with existing pain than take the risk of getting surgery or doing something to try and eliminate that pain. Hence, there's a lot of reluctance for surgery in many cases, and that comes down to a general fear of change. You see a lot of resistance to new systems coming into businesses. New ideas coming into families. People like to go with what they're comfortable with. It's inside their comfort zone. It doesn't force them to expand their comfort zone. So if you've got incoming family members who are going to become the leaders of the family, they're going to be putting a plan forward to look after the parents when they get older. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be round there wiping their backsides every day. But it will mean they will take responsibility for making sure the parents don't have to be shuffled off into an old age home if that's not what they want, and if the family can afford to do something different. If you've got disabled family members, who looks after them after the parents have passed, if it's a sibling or something of that sort? If the family has got long-term aspirations, maybe it's a migrant family and it's going through rapid evolutions from arriving with very little to building up some significant wealth, the family will have long-term plans about where it wants the family to go, educationally, professionally, work-wise, career-wise, contribution, community, all of these things. If these are built up as a shared family plan, it gives meaning to why the family business is there, why the family has sweated blood and tears to create a legacy. And that binds the family together because they're all signed up to some sort of a shared mission. They're not just in it for themselves. That's one of the biggest benefits of getting family business right. It gives you an opportunity of imparting work ethic, philosophy, responsibility, family values that have been brought down through generations, all of those things. But it doesn't happen by chance. It just doesn't happen by chance. And one final suggestion is that in a lot of family succession disputes, there is a large amount of sibling resentment that comes out. You always got the new clothes, you got the red bicycle on that Christmas morning 40 years ago. You were the one who got the new goldfish, you were the one who got the new school clothes, I got the hand-me-downs, all those sorts of things. And then that morphs into, Dad paid for your first car, he didn't buy one for me. You've been getting subsidised holidays, somebody bought you a house, all of that sort of stuff. And it's often quite one-eyed. It creates a major distraction when the family should be focusing on estate planning and passing things on. And this sense of unfairness comes up and it becomes a major blocker to what should be pure benefit. And from the outside, you often feel as though I'd almost like to slap you with a wet fish because this doesn't make any sense. But to the individuals, it makes complete sense. And so we have to recognize that. They feel things have been unfair and they want to use the forum for discussing succession as a way of working out that unfairness. Now, I recommend using a little red book to actually get people to list what benefits do you remember getting over the years. And then you bring the whole family together to discuss and create a complete red book. And this is where siblings put in, yeah, but you got the new jumper and I got the hand-me-down, 37 years ago this Christmas. You get some very interesting stuff coming out. What is particularly interesting is if you do it on a listing on a spreadsheet basis, and you look at the what happened and when and why, and you relate in the reality of the family's economic circumstances and practical circumstances, you don't usually have to balance the scales. All you've done is created a recognition of the fact, okay, that happened then because that's the place we were in. It's not because I was thought less of than my siblings. It's because realistically, that's the best the family could do. And what comes out is parents usually have tried to do the best they could for their children at the time. If we can create that understanding and acceptance, it often generates a massive improvement in overall family relations. So there you have it, family succession. We'll talk about family business succession, obviously it's a major issue in lots and lots of these videos, and we'll focus on it particularly in the next series of videos where we're focusing on family business. Here we're focusing on family elements. If you found this useful, please give us a like. Please let other people know if you think they may get some benefit from these ramblings, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. John Kenfield, the Family Business Solutionist. Thank you for watching.